Welcome to Backstage with Becca B with special guest Chelsea Cree Groen. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, this University of Michigan graduate has performed regionally in shows such as The Music Man, Les Miserables, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and more. She played Minnie Fay on the national tour of Hello, Dolly, and is currently on the national tour of Wicked, where she is in the ensemble and understudies Glinda. Please welcome Chelsea Cree Groen. So, how have you been? The past couple of years have been insane. You're in Wicked now.
I know. I know. They have been insane and hard, but yeah, I'm pretty good. It's really been a dream come true. Ever since I was 12, that's when I saw Wicked on Broadway with like Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, the original cast, for my 12th birthday, and it's always been my dream. It's always been, that this show has just always been like the show that I've dreamt about and worked towards, and now I get to do it every day, and it's really, really cool. I'm having so much fun, and something especially special for me is that my husband is also a part of the company. He's a musician on the tour, and so he was already on the tour. So I already sort of had like I knew some of the friends in the show, and I had seen it. I had seen them all so many times. He's a assistant conductor, and plays Key One, and so I was like sort of visiting him as a tour wife, and we were both. He joined the tour. I was on the Hello Dolly tour when he got Wicked, and so yeah, so that it. And now we get to do it together, and it's just truly a dream come true.
So just traveling the world together, living the life.
Yeah, with our little doggy, Ella.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's really nice. It's a lot better than, honestly, it was like you said, a hard couple of years. I was in a show before COVID, like I said, and then it didn't come back. And I did a lot of stuff like you. I did a lot of Zoom interactions and a lot of Zoom teaching, and I love teaching, and I I miss performing, obviously. And Wicked was a show that I had auditioned for. This was like my six times. And for years, I've been auditioning for this, and I would always get callbacks, and I would always be like, maybe this is the time. And this time last year, I remember I was auditioning for The Standby on Broadway, and I was really hopeful, and I really thought I was going to get it, and I didn't. But I was like, oh, but that would have been so hard because I would have never seen my husband because we would have been in two opposite Wickeds. And so it was like I'm glad I didn't get it, and we waited, and we got this part, and now we get to do it together. So it's really cool. That was a long
Everything
answer.
happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason in the end. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I don't know about like the pandemic and everything, but like there were like silver linings
Yeah,
along the way during that.
totally. I know. I always try to look for like a reason when any bad thing happens. I always am trying to like, okay, what was this lesson? Or like, what was this supposed to teach me? Or like, how am I going to grow from this? And like, you always do, even with the bad times.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna get more into Wicked and your teaching later because I did notice you're teaching and I have that on my question list.
Oh,
But
cool.
when was the first moment that you knew that you wanted to be a theater performer?
Oh gosh. I think I can't remember a particular moment. I just always remember knowing. I always which is different. A lot of people are like, I don't know, I never really, I didn't discover it to high school, or I never knew I could do it forever. But I started taking ballet when I was like 2, and I was always pretending. I obviously I grew up with like the Disney, Disney movie musicals, which were just like the golden age of that time of Disney musicals, and I was always pretending to be Belle or Pocahontas or, you know, Alice in Wonderland, and I was always putting on shows. I was always pretending. I never wanted to be called Chelsea. People would be like, my mom would call me Chelsea, and I'd be like, "Ugh, I'm Clara from the Nutcracker." Or I was always in costume. My mom said she had to like bribe me to not wear costumes to school.
Yeah, I'm
And
wearing my dance costume today.
yeah, I always wanted to be a different character, and I would force my dad and my little brother. I would dress up my poor little brother in costumes and, make them put on shows with me. But I do remember seeing a production of Annie when I was, I think, 4, and I auditioned for it, and they were like, "You're a little too young," but my mom had to. I started when she comes. Do you know Annie?
I love Annie. It was
Okay.
the first did theater as a little kid, so it was the first like ever musical I feel like I was really introduced to.
Okay,
And
yeah, yeah, and so it was like I was I was like 4, and she comes down when she's in Act 2, and she's about to get adopted by her fake parents, and she sings like the Maybe reprise, and she's walking down the stairs and like with her suitcases, and she's like sad, and I just started like sobbing like so loud, and my mom was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Like I was like loudly crying. And she was like, "Is your arm stuck? Like, are you what?" Like, she took me out of the theater and was like, "Honey, what's wrong?" And I was like, "I just feel so bad for Amy." And I just really, like, it really moved me as a child. And I really was like, I want to be Annie. And I was like, I did a lot of theater as a kid, and I played Annie a lot. So the first time I played Annie I was 9, and for about 3 years I had like a horrible red bob with bangs. I would like get my hair done red. But I played Annie like all over the country, and so that was sort of I say when I peaked as an actor at like age 10, because I was Annie for a while. But yeah.
This is a dream. This is a dream role.
Yeah. Annie and now Glinda, so
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like 9-year-old, 10-year-old you, if you got asked what your dream role was, you'd be like, it was Annie.
yeah, it was Annie.
I mean, it's where I feel like when people are like, Annie is where I got my introduction to theater, I'm like, that's literally like such a good classic answer because it's such a feel-good musical that
Yeah, and there's so many kids in it, so you're like, I could be one of those kids.
It's inspirational for kids who love theater to see that, like, hey, like little kids can be on that stage too and do theater. And there's like the new national tour now, which is cool.
Yeah.
Did you watch like the movies growing up? I'm curious before.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I watched obviously like the original one with Carol Burnett, and then the remake of it. I really wanted to audition for it, but I was like a little too young. I think I was like 8 or 9 when they were coming out, so I was like a little too young to be Annie. But I remember I had a friend from home, I'm from Phoenix, who was auditioning for the movie, and I thought it was so cool. But yeah, so I loved both of those movies. I actually haven't seen the new one with like Cameron Diaz.
Oh, okay, that it's a lot different.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm not gonna say anything else. It's just a lot different.
Right.
But
yeah.
I mean, it's not like the classic. Like it's not like the first one or the second.
Okay, but then Annie Live last year was so good, and it was so inspiring and hopeful for me. That little girl was so good. I yeah, that was like so cool. And so I felt so nostalgic
Oh my
watching
God,
that.
it was precious. I had seen the little girl who was Duffy Arwen in Frozen as young Anna.
I directed her. I worked with her. I was like her director
So cute.
her. She was like my little Fiona in Shrek in New York at Broadway Workshop, and then I like coached a couple. Yeah, I a lot of those kids. I was like, oh my gosh, I've like taught you, and now you're on my TV screen, and you're so successful. It's so cool.
I interviewed her like in 2020, and like I saw her as young Elsa, and I'm like, kids grow up so fast in like 2 years,
It's all up
3 years.
so fast, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you're like a teenager almost.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
She's so, I mean, and they're so professional too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. So, do you remember what the first show you saw was where you were like, hey, so like that is a job, like an actual career. Like it's not just a hobby. Like that can be like a job I can do.
You know, I I think I didn't I honestly like this is crazy, but I did start working. Like I started getting paid to do theater when I was like 8. So in like Phoenix, like there were like 2 professional theaters there, and I don't think I really even comprehended it. And my parents were like, "We're gonna put this into savings for you." But I started getting paid to do theater at like 8 or 9, and to me, like when you're that age, you don't really
Yeah, you don't
understand
care.
money. But I was like, that's cool. But I think it was like pretty young that I realized, oh, I'm like a professional actor as a kid, and I always took it very seriously. I was like very serious about it. And then I think I remember I went to this um it was literally called Making It on Broadway in New York City, and it was like I was like a freshman or sophomore, and I went to New York from Arizona to do this intensive, and we learned from Broadway people, and talked about auditioning, and I met my best friend Erica Henningsen at that camp when we were 15. And then we started hearing people talking about colleges and like the best musical theater programs to go for when you're in college. And I think it was like, I don't know, I think I just, when I was a kid and I was doing Annie, I was doing it at some bigger regional theaters, and I had people coming up to me and being like, you should audition for this on Broadway, and like, do you want an agent? And my mom always was like, I don't want you to move. She was always like, I don't want her to have an agent and move to New York when she's 12. Like, I want her to be a normal kid. And so it was pretty young. Like, I think I'm remembering as I'm speaking and going through all these things. But I definitely like had the opportunity when I was like 12 to be like, do you want to audition for Gypsy on Broadway? And like, do you want, and my mom said no. And I was so mad at her because I was like, what the heck, Mom? I want to, but I do think it was a good decision, as I was able to like I was able to go to a very academic high school, and I was able to do lots of like be well-rounded and have normal life experiences as a kid that I wouldn't have had in New York if I was just auditioning all the time. And I was able to figure out who I was as a person. And so so it was very like, my mom was very strict, and it was always like, you're going to go to college, you're going to do this. And I really wanted to go to NYU so that I could just go right to New York and start auditioning. But then I visited University of Michigan, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Everyone's so nice. I felt it was such a great campus. I felt like everybody I met felt just like my people. And I ended up getting into NYU and Michigan, and I decided to go to Michigan. And I'm really glad that I went to Michigan, because again, it was sort of like just more life experiences. I was able to take normal classes and minor and different things. So
Yes. And I mean, Michigan's such a good theater school. I feel like it gets a better and better reputation as a theater school every year. It's one of the top. So, I mean, what ultimately made you, when you were looking at NYU versus Michigan, what ultimately made you choose to go there, and what was the most valuable thing you learned there?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, so I think again, like I was very I had a lot of other interests, and I think like my best friends in high school were not theater kids. They were like on the crew team, and like and so I did realize that like I'm gonna have my whole life to live in New York, and I would rather live somewhere that is different and feel like I can fully focus on school for 4 years versus like I had a feeling if I went to New York, I would want to like drop out early if I booked something or like, but I wanted to, I don't know, I visited Michigan and it was just like a campus. It felt like a community, and it was versus NYU, you're like literally living in New York City as like an 18-year-old. And so I think I was like, it felt like a safe place. And again, I like was really interested and passionate in, I minored in community action and social change, which is like a school in the School of Social Work. So I always like knew that I wanted to, study other things and like work with other people. And the most valuable, the biggest takeaway for me from going to Michigan is that I met my husband there. And I met my like best friends for life there, and so it was really like the relationships that I made. I like really met my people who changed my life and who were there to support me in this very unstable, uncertain career.
Yes, career world, just So it was meant to be. And I know that you've put your minor to work too. Like you've done things that involve your minor.
Yeah, I always I did my whole life. I've been really passionate about community outreach and like using theater as like a way to enact change and reach out into communities who can't afford to see theater in person. And even just sort of like putting on pieces of theater or music or whatever with kids as for just a means to like figure out how to communicate and like be just as a life skill, like confidence and creativity and joy. Not even like to do it forever, but just like as a way to express yourself. And so it's always been something that I'm really passionate about. So
I was gonna say, has that helped with teaching kids to have that experience, to have chosen the minor you chose at Michigan? Has that helped?
Yeah. Well, what I think sort of I've done a lot of things that besides performing. And I've had a lot of, I am passionate about those things. I am passionate about like working with kids and, community action, and it sort of saved me being able to like have other things that I love on top of performing, because half of my time as a professional actor, I've been not on stage. Like I've been unemployed, and you are auditioning so many times, you're getting so many no's, and when you're only thinking about the next audition or the next show where you're getting no after no after no and you don't have anything else, it's really, really hard. And so it was really helpful for me to like have other things that I could even just like as a way to make money and feel fulfilled. I mean, so many of my friends are servers and, work as, checking people at gyms or whatever. And that's amazing. But also a lot of times they're so exhausted and they hate their jobs. And, we're going to have a little, there's Ella.
Oh my goodness.
This is Becca. She has a really cool YouTube channel and podcast.
Nice to meet you.
And I told her that you're a musician on the tour.
Yes.
We just had rehearsal.
Hi.
With the new, we're just in a new city. So, anyway, but like I was saying, yeah, I think I'm glad that I have these other interests because they've also helped me to get jobs, and to make money and to like for my mental, like my sanity, to have other things to focus on and do that make me feel like fulfilled while I'm not working on a show.
And that's something that so many people have said, like, you need to have other interests in this industry.
Yeah.
Because the audition process and like all the auditions that you go in for when you're waiting to hear back, or when you don't hear back, or when you hear back and it's not the answer you want, like it drives, like it you need to have something to turn to.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just kind of like discouraging. Everything's discouraging.
It's
And
hard, yeah.
to keep like your mental health up.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
So before I get into national tours, I want to ask, what's your favorite regional show that you have done besides Annie?
Yeah, Annie for sure. Another regional show that I loved working on was it's very like not super well known, but Fiorello.
I see.
It's older, and I did it again. I sound so obsessed with you in this interview, Evan, but I got to do it again with my husband, and he was the music director, and he didn't tell them that I was his wife when I was auditioning because he wanted it to be like impartial. And so I like auditioned and I got in the room, and it was like a weird audition where they usually when you audition, like they hardly even look up, or they just are like hi, or they're on their phone or eating their food. But this one, the artistic director was like, oh, they all stood up and you had to shake everybody's hand and introduce yourself. So they were like, this is our music director, Evan, and I had to shake his hand. And I was like, oh, we know each other. And like, we were living together. Like, he was we were almost engaged at that point. So that was funny. But it was such a fun show. We did it in the Berkshires. And then it was really cool because we thought it was just going to be a summer stock, like a summer theater production. And then it got so well received that they told us towards the end of the run that they wanted to take it to New York and do it off Broadway, and that we were all going to go with it. And so it was like a surprise that we had no idea was happening. But we did it in the Berkshires, which are so beautiful. And then we got to continue and do it in the city. So it was really cool. And I played this character named Dora who was like silly and funny, and I got to dance and sing and be funny, and those are all my favorite things to do.
Well, that's so cool too that you got to be in it not only regionally, but also you got to transfer with it to the city off Broadway.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What is that like watching a show grow when you're part of it?
It was so cool, especially because we had no expectation of that happening. A lot of times, people do like pre-Broadway runs out of town, and this was fully like, we just thought it was going to be in the Berkshires. And then it really was so cool because it was my first experience of like living in New York and then commuting to go perform in New York City. And so it felt really cool. It felt like I was like, oh, I'm really doing this. This is like what I always wanted to do. And it was such a great group of people who were all like recent college graduates, and everyone was sort of new and no one was super known. But we got like an amazing review in the New York Times and like all of this stuff. So it was just such a surprise, but like a great surprise.
So someone came to see it when it was just a regional thing and was like, hey, this deserves to be seen by more people.
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you audition for Hello Dolly? You were in the Hello Dolly tour in 2019.
Yeah. Well, this is a story that I tell people. It's kind of crazy because the day before I got my audition for Hello Dolly, I was in like final callbacks for Wicked.
Oh my God.
And so it's the same casting director, and I was auditioning for literally like my track that I'm in right now in Wicked. And then there was also like a spot open on Broadway for Glinda Understudy. So we were auditioning for both of those Glinda Understudies, and it was like a couple of days worth of auditions and callbacks. And again, I was like, I felt really good about it. I was like, I've always felt like this is just like, this part is for me, and I am very capable of doing it. And I felt like I nailed the dance callback, and then I didn't get it. And I was really, really, really sad. But then I got this audition for Hello Dolly, and I loved the show. Hello Dolly was the show that I saw on Broadway in the last weekend for the first time. I'd never seen it. And I remember I had a friend in the ensemble, and I remember seeing it, and I was just crying tears of joy. Like I had never felt so joyful and moved by a show ever. Like I've never cried tears of joy like until I saw Hello Dolly, and it was like so beautiful and so hopeful and just like truly pure joy. And I knew that I remember on Broadway I had some friends auditioning for Minnie Fay, and at that point I had an agent who didn't really believe in me, and I was like trying to get him to get me an audition. He was like, "Oh, they're gonna go with a name, like and he was like, you're not a good enough dancer to be in the ensemble to cover her, so it's not really gonna be your show." And then I got rid of him, and I got a new agent who got me this audition after I had it felt like it was meant to be. I didn't get this job. I was devastated, but it was the same people, and it felt like, oh, they didn't want me for that because they wanted me for Hello Dolly. And I got to be the main, Minnie Fay all the time versus just the understudy. And that process was really very quick. I had that audition, and then a week later I had a callback, and that was pretty much it. And then I found out that I got it a week after that. So that it was so much fun. I just got to be silly and a lot, and it just was so joyful, and yeah, I really had a great time doing it.
Well, and you learned multiple things during that process. Like you learned, hey, I need to be surrounded by people who believe in me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It definitely felt really good to get it and to be like, he didn't know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I didn't. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I hope he like saw news somewhere, then was like,
I think he did. I think
yikes.
Yeah. But it was like I'm glad that I changed my agent and got some people who believed in me, because that's really important to have people like in your corner and on your team, because again, it's all about the support system when you're getting constantly rejected.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know that there's unfortunately more rejections in this industry than there are yeses, which is like super hard. So you need that support system.
Yeah, totally.
So what's it like stepping into the rehearsal room for a show that you've seen and you ultimately fell in love with? Is it just like kind of mind-boggling the first day you step into that room?
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. It truly was. I mean, it was a really hard year of, and it was honestly before that it was hard because I was always visiting my husband, working on a show that like I really, really, really wanted to be in, and I was just like in the hotel room while he would go do the show, and I would be there like just constantly being like, I wish I wasn't sitting in a hotel, and I wish that I was like actually going to do the show with him. And so when I finally was like, oh my gosh, I am not here to visit you, I'm actually here to work on this show too. Like it just felt like it was everything that I had wanted. And like to be able to even just like walk to rehearsals together, and it was really cool and rare because I knew so many of the people already. I had met so many of the people, and they all sort of knew who I was because I was around. And so it was just like, it was crazy. And it's really rare that something like that happens where you get to do the same job as your
As,
partner.
as,
And so it really felt like I was like, oh my gosh, like, it felt really right and it felt really fun. And I felt so affirmed in my skill set after after a year and a half of like being told no and not working. And it really just was like, it took so long to be like, wow, I can't believe that I'm actually
like,
in Wicked. This is like I'm really doing this. And then I remember being like, oh my gosh, and I get paid? Like, it's not just for fun? That's crazy. So, it just felt extra special. It felt extra special after auditioning for it so many times and after working towards this for so long, to be like, all of that paid off.
yes. And did you learn anything from going on tour with Hello Dolly that helped you when you like got the notice for Wicked that you booked the role and it started like packing up your stuff?
It felt, oh, I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I was on tour before and I had an idea of how it all worked with like you get like a trunk and you get whatever. And I'm so glad because I found out on a Monday that I got the show, and then I flew out on Thursday and started rehearsals on Friday. And so I had such short notice. I had 2.5 days to pack up my life, and I am very glad that I had experience with touring, and I knew I didn't need to pack as much as I wanted or thought. That was something I learned, like, you don't need that much stuff, and you learn how to get good at packing and how to sort of like what all to bring in 2 suitcases. And I knew that I could ship boxes to like get put in my trunk, and so I am really glad because it's really overwhelming if you don't really have any concept of, you travel, it's your whole life that you're traveling from city to city. So, and I was also glad that I already had someone there to sort of tell me how it worked with Wicked, because every show is sort of different.
I mean, I'm sure like every show like books like different places and like size rooms and stuff. Yes. So it's like, what can I fit
exactly
in this place in every city?
Yeah. So I really had a leg up on that because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I've never toured before. I don't know anyone here. And I'm glad that I had people that I could ask to be like, okay, what am I allowed to send? Like, and all of that stuff.
And you mentioned at the beginning that you saw Idina and Kristen in Wicked. So you saw the OGs in Wicked.
I know.
I mean, how crazy. You've been a fan since like the beginning of the show.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Yeah, and you're now performing sometimes in the role that Kristen did.
I know.
Like, is that just like what goes through your mind every night?
It's really, I really do like to think like, wow, this is like little Chelsea would be so proud. Like, she would think that you're so cool, because I don't think I'm cool sometimes. And sometimes it's really hard, and sometimes we're really tired. And I think especially on those days where it's so easy to be like, oh, everything hurts and I'm tired and I want to go to bed. It's like, okay, but like you are living your childhood dream, and like you are in Wicked, and I think about all the kids in that audience who are watching us who we could hopefully inspire, and like all the kids who want to be Glinda one day too, and like I do it for them and I do it for young Chelsea.
I mean, and it's probably a lot of those kids' first shows too, and it's probably a lot of adults' first shows too, Wicked, because it's just such a perfect I feel like people are told like, hey, if you're going to see your first Broadway show, like this is the perfect
Yes.
show.
Yes, that is so true. I tell everyone that. There's so many people who are like, okay, you have never seen a musical, you're going to see Wicked. I took one of my best friends who had never seen a show on Broadway to Wicked. And I've seen Wicked 10 times.
Yes.
I was a fan. Like, I was a
Like,
Wicked
super
fan.
fan.
I had seen it so many different casts, so many times, and it's just a show that so many people who come to see it. Like, there are people who've been like, I've seen it 30 times. And it's a show that people love to see, and that you really don't get sick of it. And I'm not sick of performing it. I've done over like 200 performances now, and that's nothing compared to some people who've done like 3,000. But yeah, I don't get tired of it. It's still so fun.
Was there a costume that you get to wear in the ensemble that you were like, oh my gosh, I get to wear this costume and I've loved this costume for years?
Well, honestly, like all of Glinda's costumes are the costumes that I like. When I had those fittings, I was like, oh my gosh, these costumes are like what I have dreamed about. And so, like, really, those costume fittings were like, I can't believe I'm in this dress. Like, it's on my body, all of them. I mean, the bubble dress for sure, but like the popular dress and like the ball gown that she wears and but I do really love my ensemble cupcake Ozdes costume. It's like the little all the little tutus, and then I have the like flat top wig, and it was definitely like one of my favorite One Short Day Emerald City costumes. I think I said Ozdes, but I definitely meant Emerald City. Yeah, that's my favorite costume, and that feels like the most me that I get to wear in the ensemble.
I mean, all the ensemble costumes are like some of my favorite costumes in the show, honestly. So
Yeah,
it's my must ask question always when I'm talking about Wicked.
yeah.
And does your ensemble character have a name?
Fanny.
Okay, yes,
My
that's right.
ensemble character is Fanny. I'm like one of her two, Glinda's two
That's right. Okay.
besties who are like really mean.
I knew
Um,
that. I don't
But
know.
it's Pfane. But it's
Yes,
never said. No one ever says the name. But that's I think the character
known.
from the book.
I think it's like known.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Fanny and Shen Shen are her two
Yeah, Chin Chin.
friends.
Yeah. But I think like everyone like gives their ensemble characters like little names sometimes.
Yeah,
It's really
everybody
cool.
has their own names that they've
They're like no
created.
matter what. And I feel like I don't know, I've said before that like they should be put in like the programs, just like all the ensemble names that
I
people
love that. I think they
I
should.
think that'd be cute.
That would be cute.
I don't know, an idea. So how do you go about making an iconic role like Glinda your own on stage and during the rehearsal process then?
It's definitely hard because you have so many, like I have Kristen Chenoweth's like exact speech patterns and like intonations in my head from listening to it over and over and over again my
Yes.
whole life. And then you like, you see people who even like hearing Jennifer do it every single night, like you hear the same way that she does it. And like before that, Allison, who I had seen like as an audience member so many times. And and so it is hard to then like we don't get to do it very often. And when you do say it, you're like, whoa, I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth. And it feels kind of crazy because like we don't get a lot of opportunities to actually do it. But I think the more that we get to like rehearse and practice, I think you just have to make it your own, or else, because she is a real person, and I think that she is sort of, I feel so connected to Glinda, and I've always felt very bubbly, and you know, my favorite colors to wear are pink and blue.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I think I just sort of like, she's sort of like a very musical, extra part of my own personality. But yeah, just like a more elevated, animated,
You.
Me. Yeah.
Yes. So when you were first told you were gonna go on as Glinda, what was your reaction? I I mean, what do you do to prepare to step into the role on stage for the first time?
Oh my gosh. Well, I found out during the end of the matinee that I was going to go on that night. So I was like doing my ensemble track and like, normal. And then the stage manager called me in to be like, could you be ready to go on as Glinda tonight? And I had just done my put in that same week. So it was so fortunate that it was so close to me, like just getting to do a run of it and in that same theater with the same dresser. Like that was so fortunate. So I felt very prepared. But I also like I was so excited, but I also, it was like terror because it was sort of like, oh my God, this thing that I have always dreamed about, like, is literally happening and I have no time to process it. And it is just like, I've never been an understudy before. This is my first time understudying. And it's scary to, like, not, to just think you're going to have a normal day doing what you do every day. And then you're like, nope, you're going to do this huge, you're going to lead the show, you're going to play this role that you've wanted to play your whole life, and it felt like a lot of pressure. But it ended up being really cool, and I knew I was ready. Once I finally got to the theater and was getting ready and did it, I wasn't that nervous. And I was like, I've got this. I've been preparing for this my whole life, and now I get to do it, and it's really cool. And it was really special, and I was really proud of myself. So
I mean, as you should be. And I hope, do you like keep like a bunch of the slips every time you go on?
yeah, I do have a couple.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. And I expect like maybe you've done a photo shoot like by the board when your name is on the board.
I should do that. I haven't done that yet.
Oh, you should. You should,
That's
definitely.
a good idea.
Because that's like a huge deal.
It is. Yeah.
So what's it like stepping in the bubble for the first time?
Oh, well, the first time that I stepped into it, it was cool. It was a little scary. You go up really, really high when you're up there waiting to come down. You're like so high up, and it feels like a slow, gentle roller coaster ride. Like it's kind of fun, and you're kind of going down and you're up in the air, and but that was another really cool pinch me moment to be like, wow, I'm really riding this thing once I got in it, and yeah, it's cool.
And you kind of get to just like start the whole show. You're the first line in the whole show. It's just, I mean, how crazy. Must have been like chills just like all over.
Yeah, I definitely cried a little the first time that I did it. When I was up there, I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
Understandably.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song to sing when you go on as Glinda?
I love Thank Goodness.
Oh, why?
I it feels just like it's just very like an honest, grounded number, and it's her like being a real person, and it's just like it has sort of like all different, a huge range, and it's very heartfelt. Yeah, I don't know, it just feels nice to sing.
And what's your favorite ensemble
Okay,
scene?
literally, thank goodness too. It's it's just like for in the ensemble, it's so fun for me to do because that's like a number where they sort of let you improvise a little bit.
Ooh.
And you're like, you have certain beats to hit, but they're all kind of your own. And so I have so much fun, and it's kind of like a silly number in the ensemble, and you get to sort of have fun and do extra little like froofy. I like those characters, and again, it's like my favorite costume, and it's something that you can kind of like make slightly different every night.
Yes. And I feel like there's a lot of like, I feel like with Glinda, anything funny can happen on stage at any given moment. So what is the funniest thing that has happened on stage during a show while you have played Glinda, whether it's in popular or...
Well,
Any
the last time that I did it, my shoe, she has like for the popular shoes, it's a quick change into that dress. And so they have like their character shoes that you would like normally put through it, a, I don't know what you call it, like a little shoe hole, like you put it in the thing and I don't know what they call it, but they have like a quick, there's something that they do it extra for quick changes so that you don't have to do the whole
like
shoe.
a shortcut?
Yeah. And so they have basically, you don't put them on like how you would normally put on the shoes because it's a quick change. There's like little clasps that make it, you just clasp them on and then you run off. So anyway, during the end of Dancing Through Life, when Elphaba's dancing, that was when I noticed my shoe was undone. But the strap came fully open, and it's not like a normal thing. It's like a kind of, it's sort of weird, and you can't, basically you have no time. I had no time
Yeah.
to fix my shoe because the whole time I was dancing and there are bodies around me, and then you go right into popular. So I decided, I tried to see if I could fix the shoe really, really quick in like a second, and I couldn't. So then I just decided to take I just decided to take that shoe off, and then I ripped the second shoe off, and I just did the whole scene and song of Popular with no shoes on, and it people thought that I was doing it for a choice because in Popular, I like in my version I do the splits. And so people were like, oh, maybe it was just easier for her to do the splits with her shoes off. But it was just like that the strap broke. And so I had to like, I couldn't do it with like the strap secured or else I knew I was going to hurt myself. And so I just yanked the other shoe off during the scene. And then I did the whole thing with my shoes off. And
I mean, you have to like always be thinking when something like that happens and
yeah,
always be prepared and be like, okay, what do? I have like 5 seconds.
yeah,
So think on repeat. Think
yeah.
on repeat. Wow, I'm so impressed. Have you ever made anyone like die out laughing during like anyone on stage with you die out laughing during Popular in the Alphabas?
I mean like giggles. I haven't so far, no, but that would be a
No,
goal.
goal.
Yeah.
Absolute goal. I feel like there's been like a couple times where I've seen that on stage, and it's just like hilarious when everyone breaks and
It is really funny. I
it's
love
so
when that
funny.
happens too.
So I want to ask, since Wicked has been open since 2003, what do you think makes it a show that's as successful as it is and has been over the years?
It is, it's just, it has the main themes of it are still so topical and relevant. Like it is written in a way that is timeless. Like the message, all of the themes are still, it feels even more powerful, I think, today, seeing it now, like especially politically, just like the all the undertones and like about politics and like social justice and everything like that art feel so extra poignant and like powerful. And then, at its core, it's a show about like female friendships and good versus evil. And it I don't know, it's like it just it has something that everyone can connect with and everyone can relate to. And it's a huge spectacle of a musical. Like you have a flying green girl, and like it's still like magical and escapism while being very
Real, yeah.
real.
It's true. It's like it's I mean, it's theater at its core with the escapism, but it's also like if you like really go in and like think about it at the end of the day, it is real.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so I'm how is Minnie like Glinda, do you think?
I think that they're both very girly. They're both very silly. They're both very giggly, um, and hopeful. Yeah,
And how do you think they're different, and like what's challenging about playing Glinda versus about playing Minnie?
Minnie was like such a, I mean, just it she's not in a lot of, I mean, she didn't come on until 45 minutes into the show,
True.
and really pretty much like does a monologue and then bounces around and like sings two songs and dances for one big number, and then like the other is literally, we were like behind in a booth for another 30 minutes, like secretly playing card games. So it was like
Yes.
much easier of a role, and just much like less r- written and like in
Right.
depth of a character. It like she has a lot less depth because there's just not as much substance to her. So I think it was like very light, fun, sweet, heartfelt, hopeful character, like silly.
Yes.
Didn't really, he was just very innocent, and like I think she's supposed to be like 17, so has like a lot less life experience. And Glinda starts off that age and then develops into like a woman and is figuring out heartbreak and hurt and depth and like maneuvering around being like a public figure. And
Very true.
so and she leads the whole show, her now she's on the whole time. So it's definitely a lot more stamina, and vocally you get to sing a lot more, which is something that I love to sing, and Minnie didn't really sing that much. So
I mean, how do you work on stamina too? Because like the stamina when you're touring and you're visiting different countries, you're like on Mondays on the road sometimes, and then the next Tuesday you're like, okay, so I'm going on stage tomorrow, whether it's in the ensemble or as Glinda, like gotta keep up my stamina, keep healthy, keep my voice healthy.
yeah,
How do you
it's
do that
hard.
on the road?
It's exhausting, really. I think the first like 3 months that I was here, I had been sitting on my couch, not doing very much. I love to work out and exercise, but other than that, like I had not been singing and dancing every day and being ready to like perform at this level. We often have, when we don't have two shows, we often have rehearsal during the day and shows at
Yeah.
night. So I was definitely like perpetually tired for the first few months. And but I think honestly, being in the ensemble and doing that, like we are dancing and running around and we're not on stage, we're changing costumes and wigs. And like it is like you get a lot of endurance from doing that like makes doing Glinda very doable and easy, because like we're used to like dancing and jumping and being thrown in the air in the ensemble, and then Glinda is pretty much like stands and
And
walks and
yes.
sings. So besides popular, so it's like I'm grateful that I have that like stamina from being in the ensemble every day to be able to feel like I can have the energy to do the show as Glinda.
And I mean, you mentioned Minnie is a little less written. So, did you improvise when you were in Hello Dolly a lot? Did you have room to improvise? And did you learn like how to improvise on stage as different characters like Glinda maybe from that?
There wasn't a lot of improvisation for my character. It was pretty much written. A lot of times, like the other characters would improvise, and I was on stage at the same time. But it definitely was like a comedic role, and I learned a lot. The director of Hello Dolly was Jerry Zaks, who is like a comedy genius, and he knows how comedy works. And it was a lot of like I learned a lot about timing, and it was like a lot of that in that show, and also by watching others. But there wasn't a lot of improvisation. But I've taken so many acting classes, and that it's like, yes, and always.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure with Glinda sometimes if like something happens, there's room to improv too.
Yeah.
So, because it's like a character with so much freedom, I feel like maybe, even though the show has been around for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about your teaching and like how you came up with wanting to do teaching and like where people can find you for that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're doing it on the road. I think.
I am a little. I have
Okay.
less time, but I still am teaching. I have I've been teaching. I've loved worked I've love working with kids. I have been doing that for a long time. And I I don't know. It's always been like what I've done. I've done a lot of directing and choreographing, and during COVID, I had a couple of I had a lot of relationships like with theaters and with smaller nonprofit theater groups around the country that I had worked with, and I felt really sad for kids who were not able to like gather and be with their friends and be able to like put on shows, and all these kids whose productions were canceled and didn't get to do their musical that they were so excited about. And so I think Zoom is truly has been like the biggest blessing of COVID, to be able to like figure out how to like communicate and interact with each other. And I knew that I was really good at teaching, and my husband is a great accompanist, and he can make tracks, and he's good at teaching music. And so I was like, together we have like a skill set that a lot of I was thinking we did a lot of college prep classes for kids auditioning for college, and then just sort of like high school and middle school theater, and we did group classes and then individual coaching, and I wanted to make it like affordable and accessible for as many people as possible. So we did some like scholarships, and yeah, wants to work with me, my website is chelseacreegroen.com, and there's like a link to email me on there. And I would love to work with anybody, if I'm able. But yeah, I love connecting with kids, especially now that we like aren't really allowed to stage door. It's like the biggest bummer for me, of like not really being allowed still to like talk to people after the show and have to like run out of there. And so I love Zoom for that reason, to be able to like still talk to people who love the show and who want to like work and who want to do this.
Connect with passionate theater students.
Yeah.
And where can people follow you on social media to keep up with?
Yeah, well, you can follow me. My Instagram is at Chelsea3. No, no, that's not it. Chelsea Cree, Cree. It's my middle name, and then underscore. So yeah, follow me.
Perfect. And I'll put everything in the lower third so people can find you. And
Amazing.
I hope you have a good rest of your day and a great
Thank you
week.
so much, Becca. It was so nice to meet you and talk to you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.